Oh, just yeah. I
Okay.
just wanted to shortly ask Matthew. You when we think we missed you actually. So very glad that you made it to join today. And yes, thank you.
Yeah, it's good to be here. Yeah, I guess I'll ask before we go if we want to just do like a quick 1 or 2 minutes, just moment of silence to ground ourselves and to get into the space. Yeah, so maybe if we just want to relax our muscles for a minute and just maybe think of the ocean that Tomas was just mentioning.
It's a good idea.
Relaxed already.
Yeah. All right, I think that should be good.
More.
Yeah, right.
Good. Very nice.
Let's see. Yeah, I'll share my screen. I guess I'll say that to give a little more context of this particular presentation, it's really I guess in the spirit of, or like the structure of the presentation is really with let me see, let me just share my screen. It's really with this idea of like a brown bag talk, and I'm not sure I ever gave one here or anyone else really gave one here, but instead of like sharing a particular research outcome or yeah, like I did this research and this happened, it's more of like a seed, or it's more of like, here's this potential thing or concept or idea or something I'm working with, or anyone could be working with, and like opening discussion for it. And so it's more like in the starter phase than on the end phase. So that is the idea, or kind of the structure. And I have like personally like so many other things going on, so I could have talked about my own research, but this is kind of something that I guess has been like batting around in my mind for a while. So I thought I would just kind of share it with you guys, and yeah, maybe open up a discussion or see where things go. So yeah, I guess we can just go right into it. And I guess I'll also just say that I am really interested in that paper idea, Tayana. So, and I don't think this will be too long either. I think maybe I'll spend like 15 minutes, just kind of like introduce.
Let me interrupt you because we just submitted an article with Matthew already about smart cities. This was submitted like, what, 6 months ago, maybe? And we got the review reports, half positive, and now we submitted the second version to this journal with Lugo. So we might have first SYMP journal publication with Matthew, following the book chapter with Olga that already published, and Fabrizio's paper upcoming, and so on. So yeah, I totally foster or pursue, or I think that we should become a more productive group in this sense. Are kind of getting ready. Please continue. Sorry.
Yeah, no, I totally hear that. Yeah, and I'll bring up that paper a little bit in this presentation, so people kind of have an idea too. Yeah, so the presentation is titled Global Endosymbiosis, and I guess it's just introducing the potential idea that endosymbiosis should not stay in the biological realm and might be applied to other layers or fractals or disciplines or different kinds of organizations. That's the way I would put it, different kinds of organizations. That endosymbiosis could be understood in other kinds of organizations. And again, just kind of like an introductory idea. So yeah, lots of other things to be worked out, etc. And I'm just kind of getting the discussion started on this. So I think we're all familiar with the definition of endosymbiosis. And for those that remember my last presentation, there was a slide with this. But yeah, just a type of symbiosis in which one organism lives inside the other, the two behaving as a single organism, or typically behaving as a single organism. So I guess the example that's normally used in evolutionary or in biology is when cells were able to evolve inside other cells, and then they created a symbiotic relationship, and then started to depend on each other, and yeah, acted kind of as one organism or one cell, or yeah. And in the presentation that I gave a few months ago, I had suggested this idea of social endosymbiosis, and just outline some research and work which already suggests the concepts. For example, symbiotic cognition. And I think I had mentioned this to you, Tomas, once. This guy from Radboud University, Mark Slors, kind of, yeah, introduced this idea of symbiotic cognition, which I really liked. And it's pretty similar to, yeah, cognitive interiorization, which Marta wrote a paper on. But both of them basically point to the idea that cognition can be shared between different organizations. So, for example, Mark Slors uses social institutions when he talks about symbiotic cognition. And for example, if you're in a university, I guess a student or a teacher cognizes in certain ways, and then the university has other functions, and in particular, assign certain tasks to people in the university. So the idea is kind of that, yeah, cognition is shared in certain ways. So one person does another thing, one person cognizes in certain ways, and then a social institution, as an example, creates tasks and cognizes in other ways. And that's a really, really broad overview. And I'll share the paper again for those that are interested, but it's just this idea that cognition is kind of shared between different organizations, and that there are these relationships between different, I guess we can call them agents. So these two concepts, I think, point to something like social endosymbiosis. And these are more theoretical, but other research, like research on teal organizations, treat an organization like an organism, and ideas like group level selection kind of hint at this idea. And yeah, there's kind of a growing sense that a social organization kind of acts like an organism. And in the paper we just wrote, some people view the city as an organism. So with that presentation that I had a few months ago, I guess I was trying to point to the research that's focused on viewing a social organization like an organism, and having some kind of symbiotic relationship with people in the organization, if that makes sense. And I think I'll just repeat that for emphasis, which is basically that social organizations act like organisms, and for the people in social organizations, there's an endosymbiotic relationship. And that's kind of what a lot of this research is pointing to. Really kind of more on like, I guess, a theoretical level for some, but teal organizations are more kind of concerned with like business practices and stuff like that. Here is the definition from of cognitive interiorization. Maybe, yeah, if you guys just want to read that really quick, I'll give you like a few seconds. And then we can move on to the next part of the definition. And yeah, I guess it would, I didn't think about this when making the presentation, but like when thinking about it with our own organization, for example, which I think is something that we try to do, or yeah, reflexively try to understand. I guess like a question that could arise or is like relevant here is, how does our group act as an organism, and what is we might say like cognitive structure of that organism or organization, and how, for example, you could take anyone's role, whether it's Fabricio as an example, with his task of reading series, um, his role in the group has a symbiotic relationship with the group as a whole. So the things that he does contributes to the group, and the group contributes by assigning tasks to people. So that's kind of like an overview as it relates to our group too, or like just as like a quick example. But in the presentation, I wanted to mostly outline the challenges of like that framework, because it's not like a straightforward or easy framework. And I think even though there's research out there that implies that this is the case, there's still a lot of challenges with this view or developing this view, and it's certainly not something that I plan on developing anytime soon. It's not my priority really. It's more so like, yeah, like something to do on the side. But these are the challenges that seem to make sense. The first one being that, like when you typically look at endosymbiotic behavior, you do it through like a microscope, or you're looking at cells. But how can you do that in a social organization? So and this is, I guess, a problem that comes up in other parts of social science too, but like the problem of the observer, I guess. So how do you work on or develop the theory from the inside? Also, the fact that you jump from different kinds of social organizations to different social organizations or organisms. Like, for example, we're immersed or embedded in this one, but in 20 minutes after the call, someone might go to a grocery store or do something else, and they're in an entirely different social organization. The idea that these social organizations are embedded in one another simultaneously. So this research group, the university that we're technically a part of, et cetera, et cetera. And the idea that there's many different tasks or processes that might that seem to point to like big differences. So for example, like I might have a financial obligation in a social organization, but that's a lot different from like a familial obligation, which is more emotional. So these were just some of the challenges in that framework, which was pretty much the point of the last presentation. And another question, I guess, was, what is a social organization? That was kind of behind a lot of that. behind the presentation. Yeah, and the paper that Tomas and I just wrote, he mentioned it really briefly, and we didn't use this language in the paper. We thought about it, I think, in the beginning for using this language, but we didn't, and maybe we will later, or if we want to if we think it's a good idea, maybe we can continue it. Yeah, I guess that's a conversation to be had. But the paper was about introducing or suggesting that a city governance technology called a digital twin, which is basically just something that models a city. For those that aren't familiar with digital twins, it's basically just something that models a physical thing, and in the virtual model of the physical thing, you can run all these what if scenarios or different kinds of processes to see what works and what doesn't work, so that the physical thing can make better decisions and have a better understanding of what the future will be like, or what different decisions would do. So having the virtual model kind of allows the physical thing to be more intelligent. So on a city level, basically what happens is planners try and virtually model the city, which is, excuse me, I think I just, okay. Planners try and make a virtual model of a physical city and run simulations on this virtual model to make better decisions in the city. And we argue that it's a meta-system transition of urban governance. So the fact that the virtual model can contain all this new kind of information and organize it in a different way allows the city to have a new and I guess we might say better way of organizing information and collecting information. And so the information flow in a city leads to different kinds of decision making, et cetera, et cetera. And we kind of, I guess we argued that this was possible through the four different kinds of feedback: instant feedback, inclusive, integrated, and intelligent. So basically, a virtual model can gain instant information in the city. So through sensors, it automatically, or it can sense what's happening in the city second to second. Inclusive, it senses a lot of different things. Integrated, it can integrate these different kinds of data and models. And then intelligent, it can run simulations on these models. So through those four different kinds of feedback, we suggest that there's something like a meta-system transition. And I think we also, and I think this makes sense, kind of emphasize that this is more of a metaphor. And I think saying that it is a meta-system transition is one thing, but I think a metaphor kind of allows us to think about it a little more. And I guess without saying like this is going to happen or this is definitely happening, I think it's a way to start thinking about it by saying it's a metaphor. So I guess this leads us to a sense in which there's new evolutionary affordances on an urban level. So by arranging information in different ways, the city's able to look at different things and make different kinds of decisions. And we, I guess to just explain this a little bit more, it happens through, so just to give the example, it happens through something that's called a T cell, which is the digital twin in this particular case. The planning department of the city makes the T cell. it becomes entangled with the city by modeling it and having the different kinds of feedback. And then the city becomes dependent on the digital twin, because now the digital twin's a part of the city and a part of the planning process. So because the information is all in that one technology, the city now is kind of like in a new form in a certain way, one might say. And we argue that a meta-system transition is a metaphor for what's happening. And that is what the digital twin looks like in this situation. So that's for those that are, I guess, a little more familiar with data and computer science. This is kind of a really rough outline, but basically it collects a lot of different information and models, and then it can run different processing techniques on them, and then can make more intelligent decisions. And I guess, it resembles endosymbiosis because, and again, we didn't use this language. Maybe we will write a paper on it, maybe we won't. But I guess it's in line with this idea of the fourth industrial revolution, really, of cyber physical systems, which by connecting cyber and real systems, you create something new, which is able to look at and engage with an environment in a new way. So I think it's really cyber endosymbiosis, if we do want to write a paper on that, is like what fourth, it's what fourth industrial revolution technology is kind of doing, we might say. And again, maybe it's better understood as a metaphor, but it's really kind of best understood under fourth industrial revolution, and this kind of technology, I think. So I guess I wanted to introduce the idea that endosymbiosis happens in different kinds of organizations other than biological ones, whatever they are, and whether they're social, cyber, who knows, physical, whatever kind of chemical, whatever kind of organizations we're considering, it might make sense to consider a global framework of endosymbiosis. And who knows what that would look like. And I think in the social presentation, I was able to outline the challenges, but I don't think, neither do I have the time nor the energy to outline the challenges here for a global endosymbiosis framework. But I think, it's kind of an interesting idea, maybe, for us to consider. Not one that we have to rush towards, or necessarily say like this makes a lot of sense or this is true, but something to keep in the back of our minds, maybe, when considering I guess transdisciplinary systems. And I guess that's mostly it, but I guess also at the end here, I wanted to suggest maybe that it could be understood under strong endosymbiosis and weak endosymbiosis. Strong meaning that the relationships are more robust, and maybe another word or definition is better there. I kind of just threw that one together. But the livelihood of both really depend on each other. So like, for example, the endosymbiosis in the way it's normally understood or studied with cells, the cells like really depend on each other and require that connection. And I think a digital twin would be the same, where the connection becomes necessary. And going back to the social example, you can say that the same might be true like with a parent in a family. If you view a family as a social organism, it really kind of depends on a parent. You could argue, but kind of cases where the livelihood really depend on each other. And then weak endosymbiosis would be an endosymbiotic relationship with, or like where the relationships or connections aren't as robust, or they don't really depend on each other. So for example, if you go to a restaurant, going back to the social example, if you go to a restaurant as a customer, the livelihood of the restaurant doesn't really depend on you in particular. Maybe if you go often, it would. But I guess just framing it in terms of weak and strong, because there probably would be examples where it's more strong and more weak, and I think it might be a way to kind of clearly consider that, or more better consider that. So yeah, I'll leave it there. Just kind of something to chew on. Yeah, and more so open up a potential discussion. So yeah, that's it for me.
Thank you, Matthew.
Mm-hmm.
So, any questions?
I have a few questions about the paper, but if someone has questions about the presentation, go ahead.
Yeah. I can start if no one has. Fabricio, Diana, do you have questions?
Questions? No,
or comments?
Yeah, sure. I would like to ask, sorry. Well, first of all, congrats to Matthew for this incredible presentation. And it reminds me about the fusions, the strategic alliance and joint ventures that appears into many enterprise. This concept of endosymbiosis. And it reminds me too about the self-maintenance features about the complex system theory, where these features put in the system dynamics, and when two elements or two echelons mix up into one cell in order to get more force in the long term. Well, my question is are there limits? Are there any kind of limits in order to shape when to start the symbiosis, endosymbiosis, and when to finish the endosymbiosis in a certain location? I mean, if we put the supposition about the endosymbiosis is appeared in two companies, how or when can I see that the limit when the endosymbiosis start between them? This is my question. Thanks.
Yeah, that's a good question. Yeah. Yeah.
Before you reply, Matthew, I think my comment is relevant before this, because this question, I'm almost sure that there is no definite answer so far. I mean, of course, Matthew will give us an answer applying to the cases he has been developing, but this question goes up to a notion that is in an article that I probably shared. Did I share this paper by David Sloan Wilson on rethinking economics? Did I share it? I think so. No?
No, I don't think so.
Because, okay. So, yeah. So this paper we will have to study. This is a piece, I will share it in the SYMP chat. I'm surprised I haven't shared it because yeah. No, 3 times? No, I haven't shared it. It's amazing, ridiculous. Well, this paper makes a very interesting distinction. And this guy, we are working with him. He wants to join. I mean, he is a big dude in evolutionary biology and economics and so on. And he likes very much what we are doing at SYMP. Yeah, Flor knows him. Anyways, so that's a long story that I don't want to elaborate on now. But there is this very interesting distinction he makes, which is not formal, but it's interesting. He is called complex adaptive systems kind 1 and of kind 2. So it's a very simple thing. Complex adaptive systems of type 1 are organisms, like a cell, like a body, a human being, or something like that. The whole complex system works as a single organism. Complex adaptive systems of type 2 are like a flock of birds, a traffic jam, or a group of ants, where each one is doing their own individual thing, and there are connections and there is self-organization in the long run, but they don't work as an integrated organism. So the question you are asking, Fabricio, it's the deepest question, which is where is the of type 2 and then of type 1? Because complex adaptive systems of type 1 create complex adaptive systems of type 2, which in turn, through their self-organization and evolution of affordances and so on, end up constituting complex adaptive systems of type 1 at a higher level again. So this is a very tough question. So I'm not expecting, Matthew, that you give a definite answer. Of course, I want to hear your comments, but this is actually, it's the deepest question. It's like when life started, you know, when the collection of molecules became an integrated being, or you know how language emerges, is that level of depth. So I wanted to put this on the table, because we must answer this question. We have the means, we have the tools with the chemical organization theory and some frameworks we have been developing. We can at least make a mathematical model for an answer that is mathematically, let's say, I don't know, formal or sound. Okay, so Matthew, please contribute. I will.
Yeah. Yeah, lots of things to say here. First, I guess, yeah, I know David Sloan Wilson too. Oh, well, I took the noosphere class and actually proposed, like, funny enough, started working with in reimagining economics, where he was a little bit involved, but yeah, it would be nice to get him here, because I think, yeah, especially with Floor, and I think when I think about people that, yeah, really have a sharp mind, he's definitely up there. And yeah, it's a really interesting distinction, type 1 and type 2. And in my own way of thinking, I've referred to it as an embodiment problem, or I think one of the first times I emailed you, Tomas, with the goals as emergent autopoietic processes. That's the way that, yeah, I came to think of it, as like an embodiment problem. How is a type 2 complex adaptive system embodied, or in what way is it embodied? What is I guess, the field or the embodiment of it? And yeah, I don't know. I wouldn't say I have an answer, nor am I particularly good at, like, the technical understanding of how it might happen. But I do think that distinction is really important. And going to Fabricio's question about how two systems get entangled, and maybe to potentially provide some insight on the first, or on your comment, Tomas. Maybe it's when a significant change happens in a collection. If for example, we take the metaphor here of two businesses operating like type 1 complex adaptive systems or complex systems, and then the relationship is like a type 2, since they're not I guess unified really as organisms. I think an important point is when the maintenance of both becomes dependent on each other. You see, like I think that's a really, I wouldn't know how to exactly put that down, but I think maybe with a type 2 CAS, just to abbreviate it because we've been saying it so much. Maybe when the maintenance of both becomes dependent on each other, like one cannot survive without the other. That's an important point. So like maybe two businesses, maybe there's like a tire business and a car business, and like one can't really survive without the relationship of the other. They need each other to survive as an organism. That's all I would maybe say, is that maybe when the maintenance of the two becomes dependent on one another.
Yeah.
Which
Let me, please keep going. I will show an article where we developed this idea long time ago. Almost 15 years ago, we made my first model, at least, of this. So just keep going. Because I thought I found an article, but it's I don't have it. So yeah, the virtual self-maintenance.
Yeah, maybe I think that kind of gets the idea, but to use some more examples, maybe like a wolf in a wolf pack. It's pretty, I think it's like an idea we're all familiar with, and it's not that difficult to understand, but like a wolf can't survive on its own. It needs a wolf pack. So like at what point does that transition happen where it's like its maintenance as a single organism relies on a group of organisms, or maybe even with like the bird example, a bird might need to be in a flock in order to, get to where it needs to go. But these kind of examples, I think, when you need to have a relationship to survive as a type A. But yeah, maybe just some thoughts if anyone else feels inclined to answer.
Yeah. Wow. I found the presentation. This is long, old stuff from 2011 stuff. So here it is. Okay, excellent. Because I didn't find the article, but the presentation. So I can show you, Fabricio, a little bit of of our thinking about this. Yeah, chemical stuff, but chemical organization theory, right? I mean, basically, if you see this, you know what I mean. Does everyone know what this means? Olga, you can say no. It's fine. I'm not going to explain too much, but I need you to tell me if you understand.
I mean,
it
looks like game theory, but extended.
Fabricio?
Yeah, it reminds me. It reminds me some part of one of your papers that you wrote.
Okay.
I don't remember.
So basically, I will go back. You need to know this. So yeah.
Because it seems like schema for game theory, because in game theory, in the prison dilemma and so on, it's like this table, but in extended version, it doesn't work like this. It works exactly in this form. So I don't know if it makes sense for you. Expect it from me.
It's related, but it's not like that. It is related, but it's not exactly that. So this picture, this is called the Hasse diagram, or the lattice of organizations. But I will have to give you a talk about this, because if you're not familiar with this picture, then you are missing a lot of my research, let's say. And no one in the systemic modeling group should not immediately see what this means. Now, no one in CLEA even at this point, under the direction of Francis at least, because this is very important for everything we do. So basically, we have to think that this is the possible entities that can survive on their own. Okay, so this is a system with 4 elements: S1, S2, S3, S4, and it cannot survive on its own, but it can survive S1, S2, S3 together, and also it can survive S3, S4 together, because the reaction network is made this way. Basically, this is the reaction network. S1 plus S3 goes to 2S3. S2 plus S3 goes to S1 plus S2. S2 plus S4 goes to 2S4. S1 plus S4 goes to S1 plus S2. So this is the system. And if we perform the analysis, we realize that 1, S2, 3, S4 that cannot survive in the long run. It's not you cannot solve the equations, let's say, but you can solve the equations for S3, S4 and for S1, S2, S3. So it's a system that the whole thing is not stable. It will either go to 3 species, S1, S2, S3, or it will go to S3, S4. What does this mean? This is like we have 2 companies that individually can survive, but together they could not establish mutual coexistence. Okay, so this is the way, and we develop further math and further stuff, and then realized that if we, instead of putting these things to compete, we create an endosymbiotic setup. So one lives inside the other. So instead of having 2 things competing or like out, we put them in membranes. So one is enclosed in one inside the other. Then we find this strange behavior, which is explained in this plot here. So, so if we so this is the description of the same system with the membranes, and we find that that the system either collapses to one organization or to the other. This is what I'm trying to show. If you allow it to be in endosymbiotic form, you will create these patterns of mutual coexistence. The 2 things that could not coexist together, if you create an endosymbiotic topology, let's say, they will create these patterns of fluctuations that allow both things to survive. So this is, to me, an example or a connection, a step forward in understanding how complex adaptive systems of type 2 can become complex adaptive systems of type 1. This is one simple, very simple example that you have 2 things that together will not work, and but if you put them in the right topological setup, like endosymbiotic, or it could be some other thing like separated in space and so on, with mutual exchange of only certain elements or something like that, they will both benefit from the coexistence. So this is as I repeat, it is just one simple example, but there might be millions of ways in which this happens. Not infinite, but many ways in which you can make a simple system to connect with another system so they both become more. And this is
I think you froze, Tomas.
Yeah.
I will text.
Mm-hmm.
Aha, there's another Thomas.
Do you hear me?
Oh yeah.
Yeah.
Yep.
Yeah, my computer froze, so I'm now on the phone.
Ah, okay. Can I ask a question, or you wanted to finish?
No,
We can hear you very bad. We hear
Anyway.
you very bad. No,
Yeah.
now better.
Go
Thomas?
ahead.
Yeah,
Yeah.
okay. So question was, perfect. What are the conditions to make these two species or elements work together? How do you find this, not equilibrium, but this optimum in which they don't, how to call, decline separately, but work
And what do you
together?
mean by conditions?
Huh?
What do you mean by conditions? You
I
mean
mean,
parametric conditions or
yeah,
topological?
parametric, yes, parametric or topological. How do you find this optimum? What is the procedure for this?
Well, back in the day, we realized that this is a sort of game. We saw it as a game. So you give a system, you define a system, and then another system, and then you try to find the right conditions for it to be not sustainable together. And then you start moving the conditions so you make it sustainable in another way. So it was more like a constructive. We don't have a full theory of it. So we just thought of a system that has so that the largest system, the whole thing is 1, is 2, is 3, is 4, is not self-sustaining, but it has two parts that can be sustaining. You see, in this case, it was S1, S2, S3, and S1, S4, or I don't remember. So two parts. And then we started tweaking the conditions and so on in order to find if these two things can actually form the whole thing if we give the right topology. So it was more like trial and error, I will say, back in the day. But we end up with a methodology to build these kind of cases. It's explained in the article. More than that would be to go to the equations and the simulations and so on. So I think it will take too long to explain. But basically, it was a trial and error.
Okay.
And I'm looking forward to develop this in a more systematic way with a theory and so on.
Okay.
Yeah.
Thank you.
So yeah, Tayana, do you have any comment?
I'm trying to connect what I read because this is, yes, it's a little bit out of mine, but I read lots about Nicolescu, so I'm trying to make these connections about the levels of reality and these levels of organization and vertical complexity and transcomplexity, but I don't have like very clear now ideas in my mind. I have to think and find, and maybe I will have a question. Right now, I don't have a question.
So maybe before we leave, we can dedicate. So thank you, Matthew. I think we covered this discussion, and I shared this paper that I would really like you guys to review. So we can discuss it later, and then maybe invite David Sloan Wilson or some of his people to discuss further about this article, which is really, really important, a really important article. And before we leave, I think we should give a few minutes to the idea of continuing the discussion about education and transdisciplinarity. So any thoughts on this? My thoughts are, let's write an article that replies to that article and maybe to others around.
The reply to David Sloan Wilson article, or is there an article that you posted, Tayana?
I didn't put Fabrizio put an article, and then I commented on the article because I had to leave 10 minutes earlier. But this is my field, so I commented afterwards, after the last reading session. Yes, because Flor did some comments, but I had to leave like earlier, so.
So you mean, Tomas,
this is my comment to Fabrizio's reading article about AI sustainability education.
So okay, so Tomas, you mean reply to the article that Fabrizio sent in the chat? Oh, you're on mute. You're still on mute, Tomas.
You're muted.
Sorry. I meant the article that was discussed, I don't know, last session, if I'm not mistaken, about sustainable education and AI. And then Tayana wrote a very long discussion with ChatGPT, which reflects her thinking. It's very clear that it was guided by you, so it ended up saying those things. It probably knows you good enough, so it will tell that. So it's actually almost you speaking. And then I think this is a very good point, because we seem to have digested the article. I mean, not we, I wasn't part of it, but you guys seem to have digested the article. I remember the discussion a little bit. And I think together we can elaborate something much more comprehensive and deeper than what these guys were publishing. So why not having a deeper, something better? I think we're ready for it. It's just that we need to self-organize into a complex adaptive system of type 1 for it, So yeah, what do you think about that, guys?
I already told in the chat that I'm interested in, because this is something in my field. So, but I think Flor can relate, and maybe I don't know who else.
I'm all for it too. I think it's good.
Yes, you said also.
I still have to get into the deep, the nitty gritty of the paper, but yeah, I'm all for it. Maybe we can keep talking about it in the group chat, or dedicate time to it in a future meeting.
You are mute. Tomas is speaking, but he is
Again. I'm on the phone, so yeah, and I'm not using this often. Yeah, so we need to decide who is going to be in charge of this, because that person will have to report to Olga and to the group. And then this person will need to kind of decide a tentative title, kind of a little bit of a structure, discuss with people. So just take the lead of writing an article. And I can help out choosing the journal, because it's plenty of journals for this. So I can assist the person that takes the lead.
Maybe Tayana.
So who? Maybe Tayana?
As the owner of idea, as the owner of starting point of idea.
This was Tomas' idea. I have to tell. But
no,
okay,
I mean, you initiated the conversation today, so.
Okay,
yeah.
I'm fine with this I'm fine with transdisciplinary pedagogy related with, but I need I'm not so much in this AI topic, so
yes, we can support.
Yeah.
We can support. You don't need to be answering all questions. You just need to keep this thing moving forward, and we will help. Everyone will help, but someone has to be like, hey guys, this is the new state of affairs. This is what we do, and so on.
Okay,
So
this
that's
is
not leading. It's not bossing. It's just carrying the thing. Not forget that
okay.
it's development. Because I will forget. If I don't get reminders, I will forget.
Yeah.
So, okay, Tayana?
Okay.
Yeah, you count with our support, of course.
Yeah, okay.
So, yeah, I will upload this video later as soon as it's done in the cloud. So, what else? I think we are fine for today, no? Any other comments?
None for me.
Was a good meeting.
Okay. Yes, it was. Okay, guys. So
Okay.
see you next time.
Yep.
It was good to see you. Bye bye.
Okay.
Tayana,
Ciao,
if you want, we
ciao.
can start speaking a
Yeah.
little bit
Yeah.
about
yeah.
this. Yeah, so I will start.